Hey, hello everyone. Happy Thanksgiving to my American friends, of which I have a lot of. I'm half American myself. My mother was an American girl and married a Canadian boy. Here we go. Today's episode is about the poster scene around SmalesPace and how in those days it was the main means of advertising. Buying ads in magazines or newspapers or whatever was prohibitive, so it came down to the handmade and hand delivered kind of mentality and frugality, etc. My style for putting together these posters was definitely influenced by Monty Python, the collage kind of idea. Michael Bidner, a London artist at the time, and one of my best friends, was a great influence. He was a great finder of found items and including them in his artwork, and that kind of sums up my style of using a combination of letter set, cutouts that I could glue up with a glue pot, and rubber stamps, letter stamps that kids use. As I say, I think the posters were fun and creative. They were offset printed on colored paper, basically. There was no Xeroxes were kind of very, very brand new at the time and very expensive. To make a copy was expensive. So I printed off typically about, I don't know, 500. And they were sort of in the combination of 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 posters. I would dutifully go out every Monday, I guess, to advertise for the week and I'd go to Fanshawe College, which was on Dundas Street East in London, but at that time it was kind of a smallish community college, established in 1967, so it was fairly new, and it was more on that later. Fanshawe College is a whole story in itself. And then I'd dutifully go up to the University of Western Ontario, which is now called Western University, and I would put up posters all around the campus, hand them out, etc. Just anything to get a buzz. The other way of advertising was was putting them on telephone poles, and you wonder why I don't have carpal tunnel syndrome from using a staple gun and a million staples over the years, putting posters onto telephone poles, hydro poles, whatever. I could put them on hoardings around construction sites. I also handed them out at stores, like had them on the counter if a store was friendly enough to have those. And I also had a gimmick about you get a free poster with admission, which means if they took the poster home with them and they had it around their apartment or at school or wherever they were, it would multiply the advertising effect. Now, I'd like to talk about some of these posters, some of the acts in the posters. The one in the upper left-hand corner there is from 1973, and I see I've written a little note to Jay Telfer at the top, and I suppose it was never mailed. It says Jay Telfer was living in Vancouver at the time, and I wished him well from John and the Pacettes. You can see that the Good Brothers were playing, Perth County Conspiracy, Christopher Kearney, Jesse Winchester, and Michael Lewis. All great acts. I mean, holy jumping, what a great month that was. Obviously, that month of January had 5 weeks in it. The next poster down from that is from March of '73, so a couple of months later, and David Bradstreet. Wow, Dave Bradstreet held the record for most appearances at SmalesPace and at Change of Pace. I think that's a terrific honor for David. I mean, that's how well loved he was in London. In fact, he married a London girl. The story goes on and on. David has a lot of London connections because of SmalesPace, and there's a whole story on that too, which I want to talk about the great snowstorm of '71. La Troupe Grotesque was playing that month also. They were a comedy troupe from Toronto and very ahead of their time, very edgy, very very whimsical and madcap. And then the Good Brothers were back. I mean, they were so popular and so much fun that they were back 2 months later. Holy jumping. They started as James and the Good Brothers as a trio until Larry joined the band when he got a little older and finished school and was their banjo player. More on that. And the yellowish poster there, these were all different colors, these posters, because I went to Sales to buy ends of line paper, and then I brought them to an offset print shop and said, can we print on this? The original Sloth Band consisted of Ken and Chris Whiteley, the famous Whiteley brothers of, they're like Canadian folk and roots royalty in this country. They played old-timey music with their partner Tommy Wilson, who was a professional dentist at the time, and was these guys would come out and play this fantastic music that was original in the sense that nobody else was doing that kind of old-time roots music and interpretive stuff, and they played multi-instruments. Incredible musicians. Biff Rose, look at that. Biff Rose is playing in October. Biff Rose was a famous guy at the time. He had a terrific album called The Thorn in Mrs. Rose's Side. He was a comedy writer for George Carlin, for the Smothers Brothers, for Johnny Carson. And one time he phoned me up and he says, John, can I come play at your club? And can I come back? And I said, sure, Biff. He says, but you got to pick me up in Detroit because I told the Johnny Carson show that my mother lived in Detroit, and that's where they had to fly me to. So I said, sure, I'll pick you up. Detroit Airport, whatever. 7 o'clock, sure, no problem. So I drove from London to Windsor, tried to cross the border, and Border Patrol says, so what's that in the back of your car? And I said, oh, deposit bag. Well, it said Bank of Nova Scotia or Bank of Montreal. They thought John Smale, was a bank robber. So they brought me in and frisked me and did the old 100 questions about why am I going to the airport in Detroit, all that stuff. Biff thought, even though I was late picking him up, he thought that was the funniest thing because he just thought all Canadians were so gentle, and that's why he loved playing there. As today is Thanksgiving in America, I want to sort of thank all the American musicians that played at SmalesPace. Tom Rush, he was a huge draw. Jesse Winchester, Mark Rust, Lazarus, Billy Hughes, Carl Cassey. They came up from Woodstock, New York, originally from the Texas, Oklahoma area. James and the Good Brothers, I mentioned him earlier. James left the band and went on to form another band, and he played SmalesPace also. Beverly Glenn Copeland, she was really transcendent, kind of a singer, a classically trained singer, and very different, and she was always really welcome. David Essig, who is going to be getting his own episode because he was so influential in the Canadian folk industry, but he came from Maryland, Washington, D.C. area, and auditioned, and I just thought, this guy walks in with his guitar and says, can I get a gig here? And I said, well, what do you do? And he said, pulled out his guitar, and he just dazzled me. And to this day, he still dazzles me, and he plays the SmalesPace reunion concerts in London that Ian Davies organizes each year. Eric Anderson, what can I say about Eric? Always one of my very favorite artists who wrote so many songs from Thirsty Boots to Blue River, on and on and on. And then the incomparable guitar playing of David Ray. And I met David when he was playing with Ian and Sylvia. He was their lead guitarist, and he played with Ronnie Hawkins, and he was a real spirited guy. And he wrote some major songs for rock groups like Mountain, and even Eric Clapton was a fan of David Ray. That kind of concludes what I wanted to talk about today. Was how posters and flyers played a major influence back in the 70s for disseminating information about who's up and coming and playing. Nowadays, I mean, we have everything from YouTube to email to Instagram to you name it. There's any numbers of ways of letting people know who would be playing at a club. And that's all kind of a new era, but back then it was about loyalty, and it was just about reminding people, hey, we're still here, come on out and join us. Hope you enjoyed today. If you did, give me a comment, subscribe, whatever. Love to talk, and love to bring you some more memories and some more profiles of artists, etc. Bye-bye.